Superheroes and villains are very entertaining, as there's nothing quite like a fight between two people with godlike superpowers. Though there are some powers that they have that just don't make any sense. Such as, how does Magneto move metals that are non-magnetic, when all he can do is control magnetic fields? He can't just control metal, it's just magnetism, so it doesn't really make sense. And how does Johnny Storm breathe when he's flamed on, since the fire would burn away all the oxygen around him before it could reach his mouth, and then asphyxiate him until he was depowered or unconscious. Now, we all know these flaws are there, but we love comics and we love superheroes and the idea of having powers, so for the most part we just let these things go and enjoy the stories. But there are some powers that sound great, but really they just wouldn't work in real life, and this video is going to go over 5 of them. Number 5. Invisibility. Being invisible is a popular power, as we've all felt like just disappearing at one point or another in our lives. And when you're invisible, you can do anything you want, and no one will know it's you doing it. And you can go anywhere you want because no one can see you, so no one can stop you. But the problem with this power is that when you turn invisible, you become blind. You see, human eyes work with light going into our eyes and reflecting off the back of them. That's how we see. That reflection is important for us to be able to see our surroundings. But if you're invisible, then that light won't reflect off your eyes, it'll just pass right through you, and so you'd instantly become blind. And although this doesn't make the power completely useless, after all you can still disappear and hide from someone, but I think not being able to see would really ruin the power, as it wouldn't be nearly as useful. I mean, if you wanted to sneak in somewhere or steal something, then you'd have to memorise the exact route you'd have to take beforehand, otherwise you just wouldn't be able to get there. And memorising an entire route of a complex place is pretty difficult, especially if there's moving parts or other people going around, because you wouldn't be able to see them and you could walk straight into them. And if you turn invisible, there's also the factor that you might not be able to turn your clothes invisible. It could just be your power is to make your body invisible, so even hiding would be difficult, as you'd have to be naked all the time. Although with that being said, there are of course materials made in movies and comics that can turn invisible with a person, so they wouldn't technically have to be naked all the time. But whether materials like this could be made in the real world is another story, because nothing like that exists at all. So if you did have this superpower in the real world, then you'd have to be blind and naked to turn invisible and use it properly. So it wouldn't end up being a very useful power. Number 4. Super strength. Super strength is one of the most common superpowers, probably because it's something we all want at some point in our lives, especially when you're moving house. And fighting criminals is way easier when you're super strong. I mean, it's much easier to stand up for someone and stand up for justice when you know you can easily defeat the person you're facing without even breaking a sweat. And since most superheroes constantly get in fights, super strength does make a lot of sense for them, as it allows them to easily beat people who don't have super strength. And if the villain has super strength powers as well that could be the same or even stronger than yours, it does make for an interesting fight of watching you take them down. Just look at the fight in Deadpool 2, where Colossus, who has super strength, took down the Juggernaut, who still has super strength but on a way higher scale than Colossus does. And for the most part, having super strength would be pretty useful. The only problem would be that you would probably break everything around you. I mean, personally I'm a little heavy-handed and I can be a bit clumsy, and if I had this power, I know I would cause a lot of destruction, purely by accident. I'm always knocking things or walking into things, and if I was super strong, I'd be knocking those things over, and if I caught my arm or something on a door frame, I'd be knocking that door or the wall off. And if you grabbed a door to open it and you pulled too hard, you could easily rip the handle off the door, or just rip the door clean off the hinges. And if you did something as simple as just kicking or punching a wall in frustration, you'd either knock down the wall or possibly knock down the whole house. And say you're doing something every day like just going on a computer, and the mouse or keyboard stops working. Normally you just give them a little knock to see if you can get them working again, but if you did that little bang and you had super strength, then your hand would go through the computer's table. And there's also the factor of controlling it when you're asleep. I actually move around quite a lot in my sleep, and a lot of people do move in their sleep to a certain degree. It's quite a common thing. But if you moved in your sleep and you had super strength, even if you only moved a little, you could easily end up knocking your partner out of bed, and if you hit them hard enough you could actually break their bones and seriously hurt them. And this is actually very likely to happen to people. I mean, even if you just stubbed your toe on a coffee table while you're walking by it, you'd probably kick the coffee table across the room and break it into pieces. And you could never drink alcohol or do any drugs, because if you did and you blacked out and lost control, you could destroy a lot of stuff and potentially hurt a lot of people and go to jail for a very long time. So the biggest problem with this superpower is that it's very hard to control the super strength, and it's a lot of responsibility you'd have to take on, as a lot of things could go wrong and you'd always have to stay in control to make sure you didn't hurt anyone by accident. And keeping in control and staying responsible 24/7, well, that would get pretty old pretty quick. Number 3. Invulnerability. Again, this is one of the most popular powers for superheroes to have, because it means that they can't be hurt at all. And it is literally the perfect ability to have in a fight, as they can punch you as hard as they like, they're just going to end up breaking their hand. And again, this is a superpower that most people want at some point. I mean, who out of us actually enjoys being in pain? Pretty much no one. And one of the many superheroes to have this power is Superman, although he also of course has a lot of other powers. But his skin is knife-proof, bulletproof, and can even have an explosive device go off in his hands and be completely fine, not so much as a scratch or even a wince of pain.
Waiting is the worst part.
But the problem is, if you can't feel an explosive device or bullet hitting you, then how numb would your body constantly be? You wouldn't even be able to feel someone touch you, kiss you, or do anything to you. You wouldn't even be able to enjoy a warm shower, as the invulnerable can walk through lava and not feel a thing, so obviously hot water would be nothing to them. Of course, if you were hit hard enough, you would feel it, which probably explains why so many invulnerable people are constantly getting in fights, as it's most likely the only way they can actually feel something. And this power could also backfire, and instead of keeping you safe from being hurt, it could actually kill you. After all, if you had any health problems, such as appendicitis, then your invulnerability would stop the surgeons from being able to cut you open and take out your appendix, and this could potentially kill you. And this is true of pretty much every other serious health problem, such as a person having a heart attack. I mean, how do you start the heart of someone who's invulnerable? They can get struck by lightning and walk it off, so it seems like a defibrillator wouldn't do anything at all. And any surgery you'd need to correct anything just wouldn't be possible at all. Imagine if you got a really bad toothache and it was absolute agony. You wouldn't be able to get rid of it because you're invulnerable, and you just have to live in the pain. And that's the problem with invulnerability. I mean, if you could turn it on or off at will, it would actually be extremely useful. But if it was on all the time, it would probably end up driving you insane. Number 2. Mind reading. Now, this power could actually be pretty useful. You could find out if a girl likes you, find out someone's PIN number, and if you used it in conjunction with the police, you could actually help them find and stop dangerous criminals. And for the most part, this power would be fine. The only real downside is that no one would ever trust you again, as they'd think you are constantly reading their mind, and they just wouldn't want to talk to you or be near you because they don't want people poking around in their head. And if you did actually have friends who stuck by you and you did read their minds, you might end up finding out things that you never wanted to know, such as how people really feel about you.
Love you? I can't even look at you.
And no one could ever lie to you again either, even if they're trying to say something nice about you as a white lie, such as, "You look good today." You'd know if it isn't true, and that's going to hurt. You'd also never be allowed to go into certain places where government employees were. You'd have to keep a certain range from officials. I mean, after all, you couldn't go near the president when he's got the launch code for nukes, because you could easily read them and take him out of his mind. So there'd actually be a lot of restrictions on what you could do, because you can't have access to classified information. So most likely any country you were living in would actually end up giving you a permanent escort to make sure you're not going in the wrong places. Though of course that's only if people actually know about your powers. If you keep it to yourself, that's not really an issue. But even if you do keep it to yourself, you'd still have the problem of always knowing if a person is lying to you. And let's be honest here, people lie to each other a lot. It's not just saying you look good when you look bad, but it's also little things like a person could make a joke and it wasn't really that funny, but people laugh at it anyway because it puts them at ease. And then you'd know that it's a fake laugh. And you might even find out they actually are laughing at you, not with you, or something similar. It's just those little things that happen every day where people tell little white lies, such as, "Oh yeah, I don't mind going to that shop, it's okay, we can go to the other one," when inside they're thinking, "Oh my god, I hate him, how comes he wouldn't let me go to that shop?" It's little things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it would be really annoying always knowing that they're lying to you. You'd always feel kind of crap, to be honest. Though to be fair, this is far from the worst thing that could actually happen to you if you had superpowers, but it is a real downside to the whole mind reading thing. Number 1. Super speed. Now, you may think the super speed is a pretty useful power, and to be fair, it does have its merits. You could run on water, and in some cases even run through time, and travel to anywhere on the planet and also in any time period on the planet, which would be pretty cool. But the merits of this power are actually its very downfall. Yes, you could go anywhere at super speed, but once you get there, you'd have to slow down to do anything, as any interaction with people will require you to slow down extremely, because people can't move and talk at the same speed as you can. It would basically be like everyone around you is constantly moving in slow motion, and it would be infuriating. I mean, it could be fun at first, zipping around them and doing things they can't see, but you'd pretty quickly get sick of it, because everyone would talk slowly, and it would just be extremely annoying, because you know you can move at super speed. An example of this was actually shown in Marvel Comics, when Quicksilver's powers were explained with a scenario. Imagine you're in a queue at an ATM, and there is an old lady in front of you who is confused by the machinery and doesn't really know what they're doing, and they're taking forever to get their money out. And you've been waiting for 10-15 minutes, when you know that you could easily just go in front of her, get your money out and go, and you'd be done in 30 seconds, and then you could just get on with your day. And this would be a speedster's life, constantly waiting for others, getting more and more infuriated at how long everyone is taking to do a task which you could do in a single second. I mean, this power would literally drive anyone insane with boredom. And there is also the problem of moving through a town at super speed. When the Flash does it on his TV show, it's fine, but in real life, this would be a disaster. You see, when an object moves at high speeds, there is a shockwave that goes with it. Like if you're standing on a train platform and a train zooms by, you can feel the wind whipping in your face as it goes. And it's the same if a car goes past you really fast, you can feel that shockwave with it. So if a person was moving at super speeds, their shockwave would be devastatingly powerful. It would be very dangerous and could destroy a lot of things. Running fast so you can go across water or even run through time would take an incredible amount of momentum, and with that momentum building up, when you run by anywhere, you'd literally rip trees out of the ground with your shockwave. And you couldn't just run into a room at super speed, do something and then run out again, as the Flash also does on his TV show, because the shockwave you take with you would blast air everywhere. It would throw papers into the air and probably knock people over with its force. So you'd have to limit how fast you went, at least in certain areas, to limit the destruction you'd cause when you're moving at high speeds. And of course there is the fact that you'd have to eat extreme amounts of food, and God alone knows how many calories every day just to stay alive, as you'd constantly be burning through energy. Now, having to eat a lot may not seem that bad to most people, but it would be extremely expensive, and you'd have to be constantly eating, and when you do eat, it would have to be food condensed in fat and calories in order to eat enough to keep you going, so it probably wouldn't taste very good anyway. Though on the plus side, it would always stop you from being fat. But even still, although this power does have some upsides, it has some enormous downsides. And it's the same with every superpower on this list. Of course, I would definitely say yes if anyone offered to give me these powers, but they would have these problems coming along with them. Now, I do have to say with all of these powers that there are exceptions to all the problems I've listed, as the powers can work differently from superpowered person to superpowered person. I mean, if a person got these powers through magic, well, the magic probably warps the rules of physics to make these problems go away. But for the most part, these powers would work as I've said, and they might actually end up being more trouble than they're worth. Now, I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, as I personally love superpowers, and I would have any one of these superpowers if I was given the choice. But in the real world, great power comes with a price, and this video is just saying that although it does seem great, there's always a downside to having these great gifts. And that is it for this video. Are there any other problems that you can see with these powers? And are there any other superpowers that you think would be more hassle than they're worth? Be sure to let us know in the comments, and I'd just like to say a quick thank you to those who made this video possible by donating to the Needle Mass Productions page on Patreon. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.